All right, before we hand it over to Deacon Dr. David Harkins, a couple of things. I want to clarify something, and we'll send out an email about this because it's not clear. On the back of the newsletter, we have Wonder Women Sunday. Do y'all want to know when that is? It's this Sunday. It's Mother's Day. All right? It's not the other date on the side. So we're advertising two different things. Mother's Day is Wonder Women Sunday, and we're recognizing all of our women and girls, the whole bunch, okay? And so we're going to have some photo op places. We're going to have a little gift for all the girls and the women this Sunday. The lunch on the lawn is the beginning of our summer, and that's the last Sunday of the month. And we'll begin 11, that's the first of 11 Sundays where we'll combine worship. But the two are not the same, all right? So we'll get that. Y'all make sure your people know that everybody you talk to, those are two different events. Also, the month of May is when we are promoting global hunger relief. There's a goal of $15,000. 60% of that will go to the Global Hunger Relief Fund. 40% of that will go to our local Sally Eccles Community Fish Soup Kitchen. All right? So y'all, give Sally and the gang a hand on that. So again, give generously because it's amazing, right? Sally and Mike, how many people we have right here in Walton County who really are going to go hungry unless we step up. So thank y'all for that. All right, David.
All right. We'll get started with the prayer list. There were several people that I was unable to get in touch with this week, so if you guys have some updates, just chime on in. Stephen Barrett, he said he was having, this is a cousin of Marie Brannon, she said he was having minimal change. His health is really declining. He has cancer with metastasis. She said he's really not doing that well. Howard Breda, he had a scheduled scan on 5/1, but does anybody have any updates on him? That's one I was not able to get in touch with.
He goes back to the doctor tomorrow for the next
Okay.
waiting on the
Results of the scan. Okay. Ricky Brooks, is Ricky here tonight? He was having some upcoming tests, but again, thank you very much. I was unable to get in touch with Ricky. Does anybody have any updates for him? Bobby and Judy Burrow. Bobby was seeing an orthopedic surgeon because of instability of his shoulder. Said it was popping in and out on him. And Judy said that she was improving.
Bobby was saying too, he has no appetite and very low energy.
Okay. He called the office and gave some updates.
I saw him yesterday.
Okay. All right. Barbara Collinsworth is the mother of Pam Bruder. She's really doing about the same. She's in hospice now, long-term hospice, and really doesn't respond a whole lot anymore. Lonnie Dixon. This is a friend of Karen Brown. He has stage 4 bone cancer and is spread from breast cancer to the bone. And she said they basically have just started a 5-year chemo plan. So at least there's some hope with the chemo, but really not doing that great at this present moment. Stephen Howard, friend of Brooke Googe, it's a 16-year-old with cancer and going to start chemo this summer. Ed Keener, the brother of Hugh Keener, he said that Ed was back at home from the hospital, but really not doing all that great. His injury was his lawnmower turned over on him. and he fractured 11 ribs, so he spent a good bit of time in the ICU. But since that time, he'd gotten COVID and then had pneumonia after that. So even though he's home now, he's still not doing great. Lois Kemper, she had a massive stroke. She's a friend of Suzanne Young, and still recovering from that. John Miskelly, another friend of Karen Brown's, he has cancer as well, but they're doing a newer treatment coming up. They're going to put a stent around the tumor and surround the tumor and blast it to try to kill the cancer cells, and he has liver cancer. And that procedure is coming up. Richard Peoples, a friend of Claudia Phillips, the cancer is back for him, and it actually may have spread to his brain. Sean Phillips, son of Claudia Phillips, he's having some tests run soon at Emory. He's in Emory now? Okay. Anything else? Somebody said something over here. Okay. Valerie Puglisi, she had a praise, a friend of Suzanne Young. She had a praise a while back, but I was not able to get in touch with her. She said that treatment a while back was shrinking her brain tumor. So that was a praise. Willie Sanders, a friend of Nancy Arce, said he was feeling better. He had a stroke and heart blockage and an aneurysm, but was on the mend and doing much better. Sue Songer, she's been placed in the hospice. Dennis and Carol Story, I saw them the other day, but wasn't able to speak to them, and I was not able to get in touch with them. Does anybody have any updates on them? Nope. I know that Dennis was doing okay, and Carol was dealing with her skin cancer and recovering. Donald Tibble, I did speak with him. Donald has an amputation on one side of his leg, and he got an infection while he was on the trip to the Indian reservation. Got an infection in his big toe on his good foot, on his only foot, and they ended up having to take his toe off. So he was concerned about it initially because he thought he was going through everything he went through on his other side, but so far so good. He's healing well and doing much better.
He's supposed to go to the doctor today, and in his words, he's hoping to be paroled so he can go back to work.
He texted me and said he would be in the parking lot Sunday.
Okay. That's his deal. He loves doing that, I think. Vicki Walker, she really is in terminal cancer. Now she has stage 4 brain cancer, not really getting any better, and decided to forego any further treatment. Wayne Webb, brother of Eric Webb, I don't really have any updates, any current updates on him. Anybody have anything for him? No.
He decided to do treatment. They found out his cancer had spread pretty far, but they're gonna go forward with treatment.
Okay.
I'm done now. Sorry. He's going to get treatment.
So she said they had decided to undergo treatment. Under ongoing care, Bruce Baggett, his surgery went well, and he's recovering. Russ Bailey, He had surgery for blockage in his artery, and I wasn't able to get in touch with him either.
They were able to stent without drilling, and he's been shopping.
He's been shopping, so he must be doing good.
And he actually baked Bruce a cake.
Wow. Nice. John Beckham. Again, I was not able to get in touch with John. Does anybody have any?
He's doing well.
Doing well? Okay. Did he go shopping? No?
I think he's jealous. I think he's jealous that he hasn't been able to go shopping yet.
Gotcha. Dawn Bovard.
Dawn's right here.
All right. Good deal. Is that Parkinson's and
How you feeling, Dawn?
The best day, but I'm here. Thank you.
here? Monroe Davis, the husband of Trammell Davis, his surgery went well. He had neck surgery, and his recovery is actually going very well now. Sally Deese, again, don't have any real updates on her. She had some treatment in May. Tommy Fricks, the brother-in-law of Richard and Donna Adcock. Again, don't have any updates on him. Anybody have anything? No. Katie Haggerty, the niece of Sharon Rothrock, is doing fine physically. Has a custody hearing that's been postponed, and then they're involved in a legal battle in Mississippi with custody issues and medical issues as well.
And David, for Sharon, just remember, too, as a church family, y'all remember her husband, Joe, passed away several months ago. That celebration of life service, she's going to have it at her house a week from this Saturday. So just remember her as she's leading that and going through that and just remembering Joe.
Margaret Harris is doing pretty well. She had a broken ankle, and she is starting physical therapy at Benchmark. J.R. Harwell, he's doing pretty well. He's getting around pretty well, and I think maybe still having some AFib issues, but doing really well. Jim Holly, he's been here at church. He's walking very well. So he's made huge progress from his stroke that he had. Barbara Malcolm continues to improve. Ruth McClellan, friend of Suzanne Young, still dealing with her Parkinson's. Sandra Singleton, her shoulder is getting better, but still has dementia. Barry Stone, he's getting infusions for liver cancer. Does anybody have anything else? Any updates? Any prayer requests? All right. Let me pray us out.
Let me say something
Yeah.
real quick. Just because I know not everyone in here knows everybody, okay? So this is Dr. David Harkins and his wife, Jill. Will you stand up, Jill? Is back here.
My better half.
Yeah, and they have 4 children, and if you were in worship Sunday, it was their son, Will, who brought the first message. Okay, just so you'll know. Yeah, give a hand for that, right? And they really have done a great job raising their kids to love the Lord. But just so you'll know who the players are and how everybody's connected.
Thank you very much. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for your love. Thank you for your mercy. Lord, I know there's a lot of issues going on, a lot of sickness, a lot of health issues. Lord, you're the author and the finisher of our faith. You are the great healer. Lord, I just pray that you would reach down and touch each one on this prayer list, and not just them, but those around them, their family. Lord, show us all that you are still in the business of healing. Father, I just pray that you would put each of them back on their feet. For those who are getting near the end, and just pray that you would give grace to them, to their families. Lord, I thank you for what you've done in our lives here, what you're doing in the lives of the youth here. I just pray that you would continue to do that. Continue to fill us with your Spirit, Lord. Thank you for all the many blessings you've given us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
I do have one more thing I was going to mention. John Head, I want him to just share a testimony real quick. John?
Well, a lot of you don't know I have some heart issues, AFib and cardiosarcoidosis. And I had some issues about a month ago, but I think some prayers have been answered, and I'm doing much better.
Anybody else have a praise? I think it's good to hear when prayers are answered. Anyone else have a?
Here's a praise. No neck brace.
Joe is without a neck brace. Anyone else? David? Yep.
We are traveling up to see our oldest son graduate from college tomorrow. So Daniel Harkins, and then Will, you saw last week and gave the speech. He graduates next week. So be in prayer for all the graduates. Big changes are coming, and we've all been through it. But sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's a little bumpy. So they need our prayers during this time.
And if you're ever in the office and you see Allie, that's actually their daughter. Allie helps with the youth ministry, and so she's an intern here helping out. Anyone else with a quick praise before we turn it over to Steve Brown? Because once we turn it over to Steve Brown, we don't get it back. Anyone else have I know the praise from the yard sale. Again, praise from the yard sale, $11,000. And don't forget, y'all, that's ministry here in Monroe, but it's also ministry in Wisconsin. And if you've been on the fence about whether or not you want to go to Wisconsin, we can still find you a seat on the bus. All right? Going once? Going twice? Sold to Mr. Steve Brown. Go ahead, Steve.
Hello, I'm Steve Brown. So I'm going to tell you a little about the history of our church. I've done this before, and I'm going to try to, of course, it's the same church, so some of it's going to be just like it was last time, but I'm going to try to bring in some things that we hadn't talked about before, and for those of you that were here last time. And just as a reminder, our church in 4 years will be 200 years old. Which is quite an accomplishment. But we'll start with the slide up there, and this is a notice that was in the Athens paper for bids to build a Baptist church in Monroe, 50 feet by 30 feet with a good finish. And if you want to see the plans, you had to contact James Orr, and then you've got a list of the commissioners there, Henry Hardin, Daniel Walker, so-and-so and so-and-so. Elijah Betts actually was the man that gave us downtown Monroe. He bought the 250-acre lot number 64, that is our downtown, and he turned around and gave 50 acres of that to the city. So pretty good fella. He hung around until 1836, and then he lost his mind and moved to Gwinnett County, but never heard of again. But while he was here, he did some good. So the bid was taken, and this is a church that was built. And if you, now I have a laser pointer, but I can't point at both screens. So I'm pointing this one over here. This is church. The church had 2 doors. I think our church has always had 2 doors. And it had a kind of a steeple. It's actually a bell tower. There's a bell up there. This is Alcovey Street going up through here. And this picture was made from Walgreens parking lot, if we were doing this today. So, and so what sits right here now? First Methodist Church, that's right. So how did our church get there? Here's a closer look at the church. And so what happened was the church was sitting right here where we are now, probably up the hill where the sanctuary is originally. And then the church got too small, and so they moved it over to where the Methodist Church is. They turned it into a school while we built a second sanctuary. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in the interim, when the church sat there, if you were able to see real well, which you're not, there are 4 columns on front of that church, and there are 2 half columns that are back against the church. Do I have to double click this? Or do we? You can see it a little better there. But anyway, that church was torn down, and we don't know the exact date, but Mr. Coleman Mobley built a pretty nice house in place of that church, but he kept the columns from the church and put them on his house. And they stayed there until 1950. And in 1950, that house was torn down, and this church was built. And no, those aren't the same columns, because Mr. Bradley from Gratis came to town and got the columns and took them to Gratis and put them on his house. And they are still there today. So if you know Gary Bradley, works at the automotive place down here, that's his house, and those columns on front of his house are coming up on 200 years old. Just a little known fact. So then in a little later, 1884, the Banner Watchman in Athens put this in the paper. It said the Baptists in Monroe going to build a $6,000 church. Well, I don't know what happened between April and August. Something went wrong, because the Baptists in Monroe have decided to build a wooden church to cost between $4,000 and $5,000. I don't know if we lost a wealthy member, or the boll weevil struck, or what happened, but we didn't build the brick church. We built this church right here. And an interesting fact, and see again, we still got 2 doors on the church, and that church sits exactly where our church is today, and that picture would have been made down here about the door of the church office. And the designers of that church are the same design firm, of the same architects that designed our historic courthouse in the middle of town. So they're facing Church Street. And at that time, Church Street came right down through our parking lot here. And where we are sitting right now, there were houses. And this is the house you see there is a pastorum, and it burned to the ground in 1910. I can't remember the pastor's name at that time, but they saved the clothes on their back, and that was it. And another interesting fact is that church had a baptismal pool, but it did not have running water. So when they had a baptism, they had to run the hose from the house up the church and fill the pool up. Now, what? Yeah, I'm getting there. This is, Susan, my memory. So before that church was built, we baptized people right here. Do you recognize that? That's Monroe Automotive over on Spring Street. But back then, it looked like this. Hard to believe. Felker Street was the dam of that Linda, and that's a typo. It should be Lake Linda, not Lake Lindu. But it was also known as Felker's Pond. Mr. Joe Felker owned all that property. He had a farm there, and there were really two ponds, that one and a smaller one up above there. Later on, when we decided to build the church that we have now, we gave the timbers, the frame of that second church to the Macedonia Baptist Church, which is a black church out close to Gratis, and they took the frame and built this church. It later burned also. So in 1916, come on, boy. There we go. 1916, we built this church, which is the one that we have now. And you notice it's kind of standing alone. And I need to say this too. When we built our church in 1829, of course the church, the people already existed, the congregation who got together and built that first church. But of course they didn't have a sanctuary before that. And the Methodists actually completed their sanctuary probably a few months before we did, but theirs was over on the other side of town at that time. But there was a church up close to Loganville, between Loganville and Walnut Grove, called Sardis Baptist Church. Sardis Baptist Church predated Walton County. Walton County was founded in 1818, and Sardis was, I don't know their exact date, but they were there before 1818. And when our congregation was incorporated and built that first sanctuary, apparently we sent a letter to all the Baptist churches. Now, it wasn't that many, but the ones that were around, asking if anybody would want to come to our church. And that was because, you know, it might be closer. There might have been some people living here that were traveling to Sardis to church because it was the only Baptist church they'd go to. And in fact, we did get about half of our charter members came from Sardis Church. The Sardis Church replied that they would not, the whole church wouldn't come here, but there were members that they sent or who decided to come join our congregation at that time. So this is the church, the way it looked in 1916 when it was built. Here's about the same view. The cost of the church was $29,200, and it was paid for when it was built. There was no debt incurred. No, but you gonna tell me. First Baptist Church of Washington? I'd have never guessed. All right, so here's a look. This is the inside of the church. This is probably the earliest picture we have of the interior of the church. And all that's a Smilex or something up there. They're fixing to have a wedding. And so it's decorated for that. But you can get, it is after 1926 because that's when the pipe organ was dedicated. So, and just a couple of things about that picture. This door, which is the door over, if you're facing the pulpit, it's the door over behind the piano, but you can see there are steps. The door, so, because that was the back of the church. You went down those steps and you went out the door down there. There was nothing behind that. And one other thing, this is a balcony, and you see there are curtains up there because the balconies and the pews in the sanctuary were used as Sunday school rooms. So, and they use those curtains to, divide them off. Here's a couple other views. This is probably, I'd guess, in 1960s. We had some large shrubbery at that time. And Krista Carroll said she remembers climbing up in those. Yeah, we had chimes too. That's another view. And then in 1950, we added the first addition, which was this part over here. And That, let me see. That was originally going to be a two-story addition, but Mr. Charles Walker and his wife gave the money to make it a three-story addition and paid to furnish it also. Charles Walker lived in what we call, or used to call, the warehouse or the greenhouse that we just sold a couple of years ago. They lived there, actually. That'll do it? Oh, all right. I'll stay here long enough, I'll learn how to do this. All right. And let's see. So then in 1968, this addition was added. And that's another view, the other side of that. And here's a few, what? It was in the 60s. I didn't include that, but yeah, it was a pretty bad fire. It was in the sanctuary, front part of the sanctuary, in the kitchen, and we'll talk about that next time. But yeah, there was a bad fire.
What year did they close off Church Street?
That was when this addition was added. Well, the 1950, let me back this up, see if I can add it, back it up. Okay, so the 1950 edition right there was added, and then in 68, when they were going to add another edition, they debated whether to take it across Jackson Street. Mr. Rufus Harris, who was president of Mercer University and Tulane University, lived in this white house over here with the tennis court, and he told the church that he would give the land where the tennis court is if they wanted to build across the road, but the city didn't want to close Jackson Street. And so instead of going back with that addition, they came to the side and they closed Church Street because the church already owned all the houses on this side. Let's see, Ezra Chick, and I can't remember who else lived. Yeah, the Henderson family. So they came to the side rather than going further back and across Jackson Street. Here's a shot of the congregation. This is about 1955, and there may be some people in there that are in here tonight.
One of the things I can't see from here is behind all the posts, not the poles, the posts is actually a wall. Used to be a wall that goes to the back of the sanctuary.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean, it was.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but.
But we took them out when we did the renovation.
Right.
And all those little cubicles, again, were Sunday school rooms.
Right. Well, we have a lot of photographs of the renovation that took the church to where it is now. That let's see, but I didn't put all those in here. Here's a shot from 1979. You may be there. And this one, I guess, is about 2005. I don't know the exact date. That's George Baker and Randy Camp and a few people that. Randy's my age. He's still around. We're hanging on. But and then here, this is 2015. This is when we celebrated the 100th anniversary of this. Our sanctuary. We did it a year early, but that's all right. But nobody will ever notice. All right, so what I want to do now is talk about some of the people that have kept our church going. This is a list of our charter members, and there's some that, let's see, that I'll mention. Henry Harden was a Revolutionary veteran, and he and his wife came from Sardis Baptist Church. And if you remember Helen Arnold, Henry Harden was her ancestor. Wilson Lumpkin, who was a charter member, and was, I think, the clerk of the church. He went on to become governor of Georgia. And let's see, Sarah Betts was Elijah Betts' wife. And Martha Walker was Governor Walker's great-grandmother and Governor McDaniel's grandmother, I believe. So, okay, so this is just a document that we have that was signed by Elijah Betts. And him being the person who named, he also suggested that we change the name of Monroe to Monroe. James Monroe was president at that time. The original name of our town was Spring Place, and that's because of the springs. We had a mineral spring, I guess we still do, somewhere on the church property, but I hadn't seen that lately. All right, so we got all of that. And here is our bell, which hangs in our belfry now and is also 200 years old. Henry Hardin gave that bell. Henry Hardin also gave half the land where our church is built, and Elijah Betts gave the other half. Elijah Betts also gave what's known as the Old Baptist Cemetery. His mother is buried over there, and he gave something like 100 feet around her grave to always be a cemetery. So.
When we built this building, where the preschool area is, it was during a drought. And then right after we finished building it, it started pouring rain. And Terry and Lisa Head were the volunteer workers down in the preschool area and showed up one morning during the storms, and those springs, which became Wetweather Springs, were just pouring up water into the walls of the bathrooms. They had to come back, had to rip out the sidewalk on the back street and put in a French drain and re-pour the sidewalks because of those springs that are up under this building.
Well, if you go down to Childress Park, you walk across a little bridge, and that's the city spring. That's where Spring Street gets its name. Originally, Spring Street just went down to that spring. It didn't go any further. And if you walk in the park, you notice over on the side next to Spring Street, it stays wet all the time. There's springs coming. And back in the old days, the football field used to be down there, Kiwanis Field. Played football down there, and if you scored on the far end of the field, you had to come up to this end and kick the extra point, because if you kicked it down there, it'd go in the creek, and you couldn't get the point. And we've actually got films of Monroe scoring a touchdown on the other end of the field and coming up this end and kicked the extra point. They could have stayed down there because the guy missed the extra point anyway. But so yes, there was swimming pool down there, tennis court. But a few more people to talk about. Governor McDaniel and Governor Clifford Walker, who both lived over here on McDaniel Street, were members of our church, and they were both born in Monroe. You know, we're the cradle of governors, 8 governors that have lived here, but there are 3 Georgia governors that were born here. And Richard Hubbard was born here, who went on to be governor of Texas. I don't think Richard was a member of our church, but those 2 were. This gentleman, Pinckney Daniel Pollock, we had 3 Mercer presidents who were members of our church. Now, Mr. Pollock married Eva Selman and moved to Monroe really to die. He had gotten ill and he had to give up the presidency of Mercer, and he came back here and lived in the big white house on the hill up there and joined our church, but he passed away about 5 years after they moved here. Rufus Harris, who for some time lived in the White House right behind the church that has a tennis court. He was president of Mercer and Tulane universities. And Gustavus Alonzo Nunley was president of Hamilton College, Mercer, and Columbia College, and he was also our preacher. He was our pastor from 1865 to 1876, and until Glenn Money, Mr. Nunley had the longest tenure as a pastor here. I'd like to share with you about this gentleman whose name is George Selman, and he's known as the father of Monroe industry, and that is has to do with all he did. George Selman worked for a wholesale company, Edwin Banks, I think it's Edwin. I think that's right. I'm not certain. But anyway, it's a wholesale company in Charleston, South Carolina, and New York, and this is before the Civil War. They went out of business during the Civil War. They reestablished themselves after the war. He went back to work for them, and at some point in time, his doctor told him that he needed to give up his job with that company because of his health. He needed to come back home and just be a farmer. And he was born here and raised here, and so he came back to Monroe, and he began farming. But George was never one to do anything small. He bought out he was married to, Waters Briscoe's daughter, Mary Virginia Briscoe. And this was their house. I don't know if you recognize it. It looks like this now, but it's right up the road here. And when he bought it from her siblings, and it was 5 rooms. And he added 10 more rooms to it. He bought 6,000 acres of land, and they said he could drive 5 miles west of his house and never leave his property. But he was a wealthy man, but he also did a lot. This is from our archive, from the church archives, and this is in 1869. Before the Civil War, our congregation was about half black and half white. And you can see this is 1869, and it tells you who's leaving. And there are 34 black congregates that are leaving. And that would leave us with a congregation of 80 whites and 5 blacks. Well, Mr. Selman gave 2 acres of land over here on Alcovey Street and for the black congregation to build a church. And they built Zion Hill Baptist Church. The cemetery is still over there. The church is gone. Here's a picture of the cemetery. Elizabeth Jones has done a great job of building that cemetery up and researching the history of it and all. So that congregation went on to become the First African Baptist Church, which we've had services with them and exchanged services a couple of times. This gentleman right here, Todd mentioned in his message several weeks ago, was Stokes Walker. And Stokes Walker was our pastor from 1886 to 1890. But before that, if you remember, Todd told you that, and the reason this other guy says, that's Billington Sanders Walker. He's the one that built our present sanctuary. He was head of the building committee, and he brought it in without incurring any debt. And he was a brother of Stokes Walker, as was Charles Walker that we talked about a while ago, who built the 3rd story on our Sunday school building over there. But this is a letter from Stokes Walker to George Selman asking him to arrange his, he wanted to be ordained in this church because it was his home church. And George Selman was what would you call it, the clerk of the church at that time. And he wrote this letter to him and telling him in the letter that he's about to leave for China. And so Mr. Selman did arrange, let's say that's that's part of the transcription of that letter. Brother Selman, I leave the seminary at once for Richmond, Virginia to appear before the Foreign Mission Board to leave for China by December 15th, if possible. If not, then January 1st. I want to be ordained in Monroe, my home church, and now ask you to make the necessary arrangements. And so he did, and here is just a handwritten program of those that ordination service. I think it lasted a couple of days. But he was ordained in our church. He went to China where he met Lottie Moon, or met his wife in Lottie Moon's, he wasn't married to Lottie Moon. He met his wife in Lottie Moon's living room there and got married. So, and then he came back and became our pastor. And one more person I would mention to you that was in our congregation at one time is Miss Moena Michael, the Poppy lady. And here's a line out of our minutes that shows where she was baptized on 15th of May in 1892. And it's sad that people don't know what Moena Michael accomplished, but the Poppy campaign that she started has raised over $3 billion for Veterans Affairs, and here you people you might recognize wearing poppies. They don't look real happy with one another, but Moena has her own stamp, and during World War II she had a victory ship with her name on it. So. Yeah, the house we sold, the warehouse, she was a boarder in that house at one time. She taught when the Monroe Public Schools opened in 1906. She and her sisters were original members of the faculty there. And that's before she went on. She spent most of her later life in Athens. That's it, unless you have questions. I'd be happy to make up an answer.
Walkers that you mentioned, is that where Walker Street is named?
Walker Street.
Oh, I thought it was
Walton Street, yeah. Walker Drive. Walker Drive is named for Charles Walker. If you know Boulevard was Monland Place. It was Monroe's first organized neighborhood, and Charles Walker owned that. He organized the sale of those lots about 1905, I believe. Thank you. Any other questions? Look at there, I finished early. I appreciate y'all putting up with me. We'll do it again sometime.